ये दरवाजा बंद करो भाई।
Welcome to international webinar on Kashmir, organized by Center for Southeast Asian Studies, CSEAS, Indonesia, under leadership of Mr. Arisman. Please allow me, I'm Asep Setiawan. I will be moderator for the event for about 2 hours. I'm very honored to be here, 3 distinguished speakers, Professor Kasni Nat Pandita, welcome, Professor, and Feramalah Anjaya, and also Mr. Utpal Kaul. Mr. Utpal Kaul and Mr. Professor Kasih Pandit is in India now. So we have international, really international speaker here with the topic Kashmir Carnage, who started it and what had happened on October 22nd, 1947. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you about the first speaker is Mr. Professor Kasih Nat Pandita. Please allow me to read your short biography for introduction before we are discussion and presentation. Professor Kasih Nat Pandita, welcome, Professor. Born in Kojabak, Baramulla, Kasih Nat Pandita has master from Punjab University and PhD from Tehran University. He has specialization in Central Asian Studies. He taught at the University of Kashmir, Srinagar, and then in 1976 was deputed to establish the Central Asian Studies Center as an interdisciplinary study and research center for Kashmir University. He rose to be his director and was awarded UGC post-retirement fellowship. Dr. Pandit has travels widely and is well known in academic circles in Tajikistan. He has about 10 books to his credit, including a travelogue of Tajikistan titled Mr. Tajik Friends, which won him Soviet Land Nehru Award 1987. He has many awards to his credit, including Padam Shri from the President of India. He has been human rights activist and is the president of an NGO with ECOSOC status. Dr. Pandit, very happy, is also a veteran journalist. So welcome, Mr. Professor, and we would like to invite you as the first speaker for around 20 minutes. Time is yours. Please unmute first this microphone. Thank you.
Welcome, friends. Thanks for organizing this important webinar. I have been associated with Kashmir issue for last 33 years, and I have been attending the United Nations Human Rights Commission sessions for so many years. And I know most of the important NGOs on human rights world over. But I have never seen any NGO ever taking up this type of topic for discussion. This is because the Kashmir issue was excessively politicized. And as such, very few people would like to reflect on actual history, what happened, who started it. I congratulate you. I congratulate CSEAS of Indonesia for initiating a well-deserved debate and discussion of an important issue. I have limited time at my disposal, so all that I can do is touch and go to leave time for other speakers. The Kashmir question is the legacy of the colonial power. It's the legacy we have inherited from the great game of Central Asia of mid-19th century, when the two colonial empires, the Tsarist Russia and the Great Britain, were locked in rivalry to make precedence over one another in Central Asia. That battle was carried all through that century. And when the partition of India happened in 1947, the legacy continued. In 1947, partition of India took place. But prior to that, for many years, negotiations were going on between Indian leadership. It was a tripartite negotiation. The Muslim League leadership, the Indian Congress leadership, and the British on the modalities of transferring power to the Indians. The British insisted that the Muslims of India were a party and they took care of them because India had a large population of Muslims also. The socialist revolution of Russia resulted in creation of 7 Central Asian states, 5 called the Turkestan Central Asian states, and 2 Trans-Caspian states. In Central Asia, Tajikistan, the state of Tajikistan is called the underbelly of Soviet Union. Its borders touch with the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the British colonialists knew very well that if the northern part of J&K, that's Gilgit and Baltistan, passed into the hands of Indians, then the Indians might compromise with the Soviets, because India was on good terms with the Soviet Union on ideological basis. And that would pose a threat to the British Empire and also to the Indian Ocean, the Indo-Pacific region. Therefore, they made it a point that Gilgit and Baltistan, the northern areas of Kashmir, should remain in the hands of the British somehow, or under the influence of the British. So when the partition was announced by Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, in June 1947, there and then, those who were to be at the helm of affairs in Pakistan, they entered into a conspiracy with the British officers in India, the colonial officers in India, how to retain northern India, northern Kashmir. So they devised a conspiracy as early as June, in which they planned to arrange an incursion of Jammu and Kashmir state, not by the regular forces of Pakistan, but by a proxy. And the proxy were the tribesmen of Northwest Frontier Province. Now, as you know, the Northwest Frontier Province has a population which is ethnically common to Afghanistan and to Northwest Frontier of Pakistan, which has now been given the name of Pakhtunkhwa by Pakistan, or of Pakistan by Afghanistan, Pakistan by the Americans. So this was the epicenter of the tribesmen. And then the rulers of Pakistan, in combination with the British activists, planned a conspiracy in which these people, the tribesmen, especially of the tribes of Mahsuds and other tribes, were involved. But before partition of India, when King Zahir Shah of Afghanistan came to know that India was to be divided and a new state of Pakistan was going to be created, he instigated the Pashtuns or Pakhtuns, the ethnic Pakhtuns of this area of Pakhtunistan, because the Pakhtuns means the ethnic Pakhtuns of Afghanistan and Pakistan in Peshawar. They never accepted the Durand line. The Durand line was drawn by Colonel Durand, a British officer, which divided the Pakhtuns into the Afghan segment and Northwest Frontier segment. They refused it, and King Zahir Shah of Afghanistan provoked these Pashtuns, these Pakhtuns, to form a sort of a union and demand that a Pakhtun land should be created, or Pakhtunistan should be created. When the Pakistani rulers came to know about it, they tried to mollify King Zahir Shah and told him that we take these Pashtun Lashkars, Lashkar means contingents, armed contingents. We take them to Kashmir, and after we have won the Kashmir, we grant you the Pakhtunistan also. So in this way, he was trapped, King Zahir Shah was trapped, and he allowed the Pashtuns to move into Kashmir. So months before, ahead of the partition of India, the Pashtuns were assembled in Peshawar, the Mahsuds, the Memons, the tribal chiefs assembled in a small mud hut in Landikotal near the Khyber Pass, where they drew the plan of leading an incursion into Kashmir. And they came out, and in Peshawar town, they raised the slogan, Allahu Akbar. And then the Pashtuns were invited to assemble, join an expedition, an incursion of Kashmir. The reports are that about 4,000 to 5,000 Pashtuns assembled. Pakistan provided them trucks to carry them, transport them to the front in Kashmir. They were provided arms by Brigadier Akbar Khan, who was in charge of the arms stores of Pakistan. And then, in a secret meeting, which was presided over by Liaquat Ali Khan in Rawalpindi, they were given a handsome amount to undertake the entire project, the plan, which was called Operation Gulmarg. Gulmarg is the name of a tourist resort in Kashmir, and the name was given because these tribesmen, they raised several lashkars. Lashkar means a contingent of troops, and they dispatched them in 3 or 4 directions. The entire plan was drawn by Pakistani commanders, generals, and General Akbar Khan, who later on became in charge of Kashmir operation. He has given in his book the complete story of what planning was made. From the main road, that means from Muzaffarabad, which was a capital city on the other side of river Jhelum. From there, 10 lashkars would move along the main road, what was called the Jhelum Valley Road, from Muzaffarabad to Srinagar, a distance of 137 miles. The other lashkars were to proceed via Punch, the southern part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and another lashkar was deployed via northern part of Tishwal and Karna. So they were to move simultaneously. 20th of September 1947 was the D-Day scheduled for the assault. Somehow, this news had leaked when a message was being sent from a British commander, to the commander-in-chief, General Messervy. It leaked. That letter fell into the hands of an Indian major named Major Kalkat, who was at that time in Banu Brigade, and he was an adjutant general. The letter fell in his hand. He got hold of the contents of the letter, and in the night he departed and secretly fled Pakistan and came to India, and straight away went to army headquarters to convey them the news that a secret plan had been hatched by Pakistanis for attacking Kashmir. Now, for some reason, this attack was delayed by 2 days, and instead of 20 of October, the attack took place on 22nd of October, 1947. They came via Gadi, Habibullah route, which joins Muzaffarabad. Muzaffarabad was an important military center, and an important town, strategic town on the other side of River Jhelum. In Muzaffarabad, the state forces, very small in number, they offered resistance as far as they could, but they could not withstand in face of huge number of invaders, to the tune of 3,000 of them, reinforced later on by another 1,000 or 2,000 armed people from the tribal areas. And their commander was one Khurshid Anwar. He happened to be in charge of security of Muslim League, and from there he was picked and made commander of the invading force of the tribesmen. But actual commanders were Pakistani officers, military officers, who had drawn the entire plan and who were providing the logistics support to the invaders. On the morning of 22nd of October, after fighting and killing the small number of Dogra forces, state forces, who were small in number, and at the same time, the Muslim contingents of the Dogra forces, they deserted and turned over to the invading forces, joined hands with them, and they took the leading part in atrocities on the minorities. The story of atrocities unleashed on the Hindus and Sikhs of Muzaffarabad by the invading forces on 22nd of October has been vividly told, not by Indians, but by the Pakistani, by the Azad Kashmir historians themselves, who have themselves suffered the oppression from Pakistan army. And these books are in Urdu, and I have mostly utilized these sources and not depended on Western sources or Indian sources, because they were the people at the spot on the helm of affairs, and they were eyewitness. The horrendous stories which they have related makes one shudder. And later on, we came to know, the reports are that something between 4,500 to 5,000 Hindus and Sikhs were done to death in one day, and about 1,800 Hindu and Sikh women and girls were kidnapped, put in a concentration camp, raped, and then taken prisoners. And many of them, most of them, were sold in the bazaars of Rawalpindi, Peshawar, and other places for 2 rupees per head. In Geneva, I went to the Red Cross, office of the Red Cross, and I searched the documents there. I came to various reports of the Red Cross representatives who had visited the camps, and these women, raped and abducted women, and they had made a report that they were sold for rupees 2 per woman in the markets of Peshawar. And some of the women were taken to the areas, what you call today Waziristan. Muzaffarabad overnight presented a horrendous picture of loot, arson, mayhem, massacres, rapes, and whatnot. And when this was done, they moved on towards the valley. Dumail means where two rivers meet, the Kishinganga coming from northern Kashmir, Gilgit, and Jhelum coming from India. This place is called Dumail. Here, there were about 200 soldiers of the state army who put a stiff resistance. And all of them were martyred. They sacrificed their lives trying to protect the valley, but they could not because of the overwhelming numbers of the invaders. Dumail fell. After that, they moved towards Uri, another important station. On way to Srinagar, here they met with resistance from a small contingent of 150 soldiers commanded by Brigadier Rajendra Singh, the commander-in-chief of the state forces. And Brigadier Rajendra Singh was ordered by Maharaja Hari Singh to proceed with small forces that he had at his disposal. The orders were last man and last bullet. Resist the invaders to the last man and to the last bullet. This great and greatest hero of Kashmir war in 1947, Brigadier Rajendra Singh, did not budge. He was hit by bullets. He lay wounded, but he continued to fight until he lost his life. He died there. Only 3 or 4 out of 150 of his men could, and their 2 wounded, could withdraw. The final battle on 26th of October, early in the morning, at about 9 or between 9 and 10, the raiders captured Baramulla, the first important town, which is the entry port of the valley, from where the valley begins. I belong to Baramulla. I was of 16 years of age at that time. I was eyewitness to what happened, eyewitness to how Baramulla fell, and how did they conduct the loot and arson and rape and massacre of the Hindus and Sikhs in Baramulla. They moved from town to town, just 2 or 3 tribesmen with 303 rifles slung on their shoulders, followed by 2,000 local miscreants raising the slogan of Pakistan Zindabad with Pakistani armbands and flags and green turbans walking behind. And whenever these 3 tribesmen entered a village and they were shown the houses of a Hindu or a Sikh, they attacked, they killed them and looted them. They wanted money, gold, and within 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, they would loot anything they got from the house and come out and ask the people, thousands of them, to loot the house. And these people looted the house, leaving not a single blade of grass in that house. This happened right from Baramulla up to Shalteng, up to the peripheries of Srinagar, from 26th of October to 7th of November. I cannot give you the entire story because of the paucity of time, but at least 3,000 Sikhs were massacred brutally, and hundreds of them, hundreds of their women flung into the river and were drowned. They drowned themselves, they killed themselves, but did not want to go into the hands of the tribesmen. Same was the case with the Hindus also. There was hardly any village, hardly any nook of the valley of District Baramulla. District Baramulla at that time was one large district connecting, starting from Uri right up to the peripheries of Srinagar, that's Shaltang. This entire, not a single house was left. So this perfidy continued. And then, as you know, on 26th of October, when Baramulla fell, the Maharaja Hari Singh of Kashmir approached government of India for help. The government said that we cannot send forces because you have first to accede to the Indian Union. That will give us the legal authority to send troops to Kashmir. Remember this thing. Then, 3 days prior to the Independence Day of Kashmir, that's on 12th of August, Maharaja of Kashmir had conducted a standstill agreement with both dominions, Pakistan and India. Pakistan had accepted. He had said that he wanted some time to decide which of the two dominions he would accede to. Pakistan accepted and status quo was assured, but India asked some clarifications. Only 3 days later, Pakistan violated this agreement and marched its troops into Kashmir, decided to march its troops into Kashmir. So on the 26th, there was, I will not go into the detail, there was a long discussion in New Delhi. The Defense Committee met under the chairmanship of Lord Mountbatten, who was the Governor General. And even Nehru was reluctant to send troops because the British Commander-in-Chief, General Butcher, he made a pretext. He says, oh, this is winter and there is no direct transport and there will be snow and our troops will be caught up there, held up there, we cannot supply, and all those nonsense, because they did not want Indian troops to come to Kashmir and resist the invaders. But then even Nehru was complacent. But then Indian Home Minister Sardar Patel, he intervened. He was silent for 1 hour, listening to the debate. Then he was no more tolerant. He addressed Nehru, Prime Minister, said, Nehru, do you want Kashmir or not? Say yes or no. Nehru said yes. And then the second word which Patel uttered, he addressed the Commander-in-Chief, who would be the Commander-in-Chief of India, General Cariappa. General, I want Indian troops to be in Kashmir tomorrow morning. Road or no road, weather or no weather, I don't know. I want troops to be in Kashmir tomorrow morning. On the morning on 27th of October 1947, the Sikh light infantry landed at the airport, and then the resistance began. And by that time, the raiders had assembled on the peripheries of Srinagar. Srinagar was within their firing range, but the Indian resistance force, Indian troops spread out, and at Shaltang, which is the gate of Srinagar city, a great fight took place. And the brave and trained Indian soldiers, though small in number, overwhelmingly defeated the traders. 600 of them lay dead on the battlefield, and by evening they withdrew and retired to Baramulla, and then onwards to Uri. And next morning, early in the morning, I distinctly remember, next morning at about 10 on 8th of November 1947, the Sikh Light Infantry, commanded by Brigadier San, recaptured Baramulla. I was very much there in Baramulla. I was very much in the town, and I saw the troops moving.
Please allow me
This
the
is-
time, 2 minutes more, Professor, if you
Pardon?
like. Please allow me to remind 2 minutes more of the time
Okay.
of presentation.
Now,
Thank you.
this is the answer to your question: who started it and what did they do? The atrocities are inhuman. They have never been recounted. Even the British missionaries were also massacred. Their women were also massacred. And the BBC did release the report of a missionary who was rescued and taken back to London. This is a bird's eye view of the entire story I have given to you. Thank you very much for patient listening.
Big thank you for Professor Kasinath Pandita from University of Kashmir for very details of event that time was what was happening in Kashmir. Is not only explaining but also, I think, witness of the tragedy in the Kashmir at the times. So we can discuss it later on details. The next speaker, Mr. Feramalah Anjaya, he is a senior research fellow of CSEAS. Please, I would like to introduce first for the audience who listen and follow our discussion now. Mr. The title of his presentation, A Tribal Incursion of Kashmir, October 1947, Atrocities on Religious Minorities. I would like to read the first, Mr. Feramalah, the biography. You are a senior journalist. I think my colleague also, and writer from Indonesia. He is currently working as senior research fellow at the Jakarta-based Center for Southeast Asian Studies, CSEAS. He has been working for Indonesian prestigious English daily, the Jakarta Post, for over 25 years. As the foreign desk editor of the Post, Anjaya wrote numerous articles on international affairs, including the South China conflict. Anjaya has a long experience as a journalist in Indonesia, and he wrote also several books during last 3 decades. Yeah, and following a speaker from numerous international seminars. Basically, Mr. Anjaya was born in 1961 in India, where he obtained MPhil, a degree from the School of International Study, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and master degree in history from the University of Madras, Chennai. After moving to Indonesia in 1991, he earned diploma in Indonesian language from University of Indonesia, and also he speaks fluent Telugu, English, Hindi, and of course Bahasa Indonesia. Mr. Feramalah, time is yours. Please unmute your microphone first. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, now thank you for accept my fellow distinguished speakers, especially Professor Kashinath Pandita and Mr. Utpal Kaul. Just now we heard a horrible story of Kashmiri people because today we are so lucky to have an eyewitness who explained what happened 74 years ago. But unfortunately, as we speak now, A similar situation is going on in Jammu and Kashmir now, because now these terrorists, state-sponsored terrorists, entered into Jammu and Kashmir, killing Hindus, Sikhs, even Muslims, and even migrant workers on the streets. So it is a very bad situation there, but it is very unfortunate. So that's why I am going to present my paper titled Rise in Military-Sponsored Terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, the plight of the Kashmiri people continues. Because Kashmir is a very unique place, because it is people say that it is a paradise on earth. So just I will give some brief history. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, I see, you can see the picture, how beautiful it is, with the snow mountains and greeneries and lakes, rivers. It is so beautiful. So now the Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory since 2019. It has a population of around 12.6 million people. Out of that, I think around 68.8% of the people are Muslims, because Jammu area is a Hindu majority area. Kashmir is a Muslim majority area. But if you combine overall in these two regions, Muslims are in the majority. Then it has an area of 222,236 square kilometers. And very uniquely, it has two capital cities. One is Jammu, which can work as a capital city from November to April. And we have another city called Srinagar, which will be the capital city from May to October. I think this is October. So now Srinagar is the capital. And of course, the Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir also has 4 seasons. Then they speak many languages, mainly the Kashmiri, Dogra, Urdu, Hindi, and English. Now Jammu and Kashmir has a literacy rate of 67%. It is still a little bit low if you compare to the overall India, but it has to improve a lot. Next slide, please. Then we go a little bit much before the previous history, how this Jammu and Kashmir came to existence. It is very strategically located. It is also a gateway, or like a hub for travelers who are coming from the Central Asia as well as from China. So it is like a transit point, and it is very strategically located. It is abundant in lakes, rivers, and glaciers. There is no shortage of water. An important attraction for traders, scholars, and invaders, because it is so beautiful and so prosperous at the time in the past. And also there is a very unique history. People say that it is associated with 3 A's and 3 M's. What are 3 A's and what are 3 M's? First, I will explain about the 3 A's, because Jammu and Kashmir, much before Christ, it had 2 visitors. The first visitor was the Alexander the Great, the king of Macedonia. He visited Kashmir on his way to India. Then there was also a very funny story that his horse died. His horse was Bucklephalus. So that's why there is a town now called Buflias. It is after the name of the Alexander's horse. And then the second A is related to the Ashoka the Great. Ashoka is an Indian emperor who converted to Buddhism, and then he visited Kashmir, and then from here the Buddhism spread to Ladakh, Tibet, and China. Then when much before coming to Buddhism, people used to follow the one form of Hinduism called Shivaism. And then the third A is Akbar the Great. He is a Mughal emperor who really he was not a visitor. He occupied the Jammu and Kashmir, and the Jammu and Kashmir was under his rule. Next slide, please. Then the three M's was actually the first Alexander the Great was the king of Macedonia, which starts with M, and the second Ashoka was Maurya emperor, which starts with M. The third one was Akbar, who came from the Mughal dynasty. So these three M's. So now we will see just the religious history. Like it was from the beginning, it was a seat of Shaivism. It is one of the forms of the Hinduism. Then Ashoka brought Buddhism to the region in the 3rd century BC, and Buddhism spread from here to, I said, until China. And in the 14th century, Islam came to Jammu and Kashmir area from Khyber Pass. Khyber Pass is a mountain pass between present Pakistan and Afghanistan. And so the uniqueness of Jammu and Kashmir people is Islam, Shaivism, and Buddhism coexisted. Next slide, please. Then if you see the political history, we have 480 years of Muslim rule. Like the first dynasty was the Sultan dynasty. Actually, it was founded by Shah Mir from the Swat Valley, but he was an immigrant to the Jammu and Kashmir region. And then under the Akbar period, the Mughals occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They ruled until 1751. And then from there, the Afghanistan king, Durrani Empire, they occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they ruled it. So we had a 480 years, almost 500 years of Muslim kings who ruled this region. Next slide, please. Then we have non-Muslim rule also. After this Durrani rule, and the Sikh Empire, the famous King Ranjit Singh, he occupied the Jammu and Kashmir area. And then from that, it was the first non-Muslim dynasty which ruled Jammu and Kashmir. Then we have the local king, that was Dogra dynasty, which was founded by Gulab Singh. And then he became a sovereign ruler of Jammu under the Sikh Empire. Then he expanded the territory to Ladakh, Gilgit, Baltistan, and Gartok. And he also, in 1846, when after the first Anglo-Sikh war, then the East India Company from the Britain, they sold this Kashmir Valley to this King Gulab Singh. So he bought actually the Kashmir Valley because he is from Jammu. So he was from Jammu and he bought this Kashmir Valley. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. So the Dogra dynasty continued until 1947 because at the time we have to see what was the problem. Because in 1947, British colonial masters, they decided that we have to give the independence, but they played a very a game in which the British India was divided into two countries. One is Hindu majority but a secular India, and the other one is a religion-based Muslim area called Pakistan. But this was the only territory which was under the direct control of the British. But we had at the time 562 princely states, which are, we can say, semi-independent, like because the defense and foreign affairs and communications were controlled by the British. The rest these kings have full freedom. So at the time of the independence, the British government and these India and Pakistan agreed that these princely states, either they can join India or they can join Pakistan or they can remain independent. Then at the time, the Jammu and Kashmir king was Raja Hari Singh, but he was very indecisive. He didn't want to join either India or Pakistan. Next slide, please. We had a very strange situation because the Muslim majority Pakistan, they thought that this Jammu and Kashmir is full of Muslims, so they automatically they must join Pakistan. But actually, in the Pakistani propaganda, they never mention about the Muslims from the Jammu and Kashmir did not want to join Pakistan because they have a very big political party called National Conference. Then under the leadership of the Sheikh Abdullah, they didn't like the Pakistan and its leaders. So that's why even once the Pakistan leader and founder Muhammad Ali Jinnah called Sheikh Abdullah was a betrayer, because he was very close to Nehru and very close to the Indian National Congress. But at the same time, Raja Hari Singh did not like Nehru. They had some personal differences. He was not a favor. So it is a very strange situation. The people of Jammu and Kashmir, Muslims, mainly Muslims, do not want to join Pakistan. And at the same time, the ruler, Hindu ruler, he did not want to join India. Actually, he preferred to be independent, but given the circumstances, it was not possible. So like Mr. Kashinath Pandit said, the king wanted to sign agreements with both India and Pakistan, the settlement agreements, but Pakistan signed it, but they blocked all the exports, all the supplies to Jammu and Kashmir to coerce Pakistan to join, Kashmir to join in Pakistan. So it was a very bad way. But then just after 2 months, September, October, only 2 months, the Pakistanis try to invade Kashmir. Next slide, please. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as Mr. Kashinath Pandit said, that the Pakistan army launched an operation called Gulmarg, in which thousands of Pashtun tribes were involved. Actually, the army officers told these Pashtun tribes that you have to go to Kashmir to help and support your fellow Muslims. Then on October 22, this day, they attacked the Muzaffarabad town, and from there they moved to Mr. Kashinath's town, Baramulla and Uri. What they did was completely, it was a genocide against people. Not only the Hindus, Sikhs, and even Muslims, they were not happy because their houses were burned, and they were in some places they were also killed. So all people faced this massacre. It was like a barbarianism. Then just now Mr. Kashinath cited from one book that around almost 5,000 civilians were killed. What was their sin? They were not belonging to one religion. The religion same with the invaders, and 1,800 women were raped. And more inhumanly, these women, after the raping of these women, and they took as slaves and they took to the Pakistani cities and they sold. It was a completely unacceptable act. Then they surrounded the Srinagar area, So in my personal opinion, I think it was Pakistan that forced Jammu and Kashmir to accede to India. So maybe I think we can say that India must thank Pakistan. So I mean, just for yes. So it was it was the Pakistan which created this very ugly situation in which the Jammu and Kashmir king acceded Jammu and Kashmir to India. With certain conditions, of course. And then next slide, please. Then this invasion, it was a massacre of people, and they occupied several towns and cities. They looted, burned, and they raped the women. Then this also led to the first Indo-Pakistan War from 1947 to 1949. It was India that went to the United Nations Security Council, and the United Nations passed two resolutions, 39 and 47. Then according to that UN resolutions, first Pakistan must withdraw these all Pashtun tribes and its military from Jammu and Kashmir. And then India also must minimize its forces and must release all the political prisoners. But since the Pakistan didn't withdraw, and India also didn't follow this United Nations. So the United Nations Security Council resolution was never implemented because it was Pakistan's main mistake. Then actually we should see here, sometimes in the Pakistani propaganda says that India illegally occupied Kashmir. What legal right Pakistan has in Kashmir? Jammu and Kashmir was an independent state before 1947, and then it was the ruler of the Jammu and Kashmir state legally acceded to India. India legally came to Jammu and Kashmir, and then they helped and they deployed their troops, and they pushed back these invaders, and they controlled. But at the same time, the UN and some other countries' pressure, they agreed to a ceasefire. So with that ceasefire, Pakistan got some 1/3 of the Jammu and Kashmir territory, which was occupied by the Pakistani troops, and India got the remaining territory. Then the Pakistan was so desperate. Then it launched wars in 1965 and in 1999 on the issue of the Kashmir, but in all wars it failed. But we can ask the question, why? Why Pakistan deliberately want this territory? Because first thing is, of course, they say the majority of the people are Muslims. That is one, okay. But actually there is another important strategic thing. All the rivers, basically which form the Indus River Valley system. Next slide, please. Yeah. So actually, all the 5 rivers, Jhelum, like the Indus Valley, all the rivers flow from Jammu and Kashmir to Pakistan. So that's why it is also one of the strategic aspect. So that's why it is very desperate, but because it never achieved its objectives, targets. Pakistan then, after losing all these wars, it adopted a new strategy in 1989. It is called a proxy war. Then the state itself, like using its spy agency, interstate services intelligence, and Pakistan military, they aided terrorists and separatists, and they sent a lot of armed trained rebels to this Jammu and Kashmir to create a chaos there. The next slide, please. So if we see that, for example, from the 1989 to 2000, we have 10,000 civilians were killed in 12 years. Then from 2000 to 2021, we have almost 5,000 people were killed, civilians. So then, of course, there were in the last 20 years or maybe 30 years, we have 25,000 terrorists were killed. Most of these people are actually from Pakistan, and also even Pakistan used foreign terrorists like belonging to the Al-Qaeda group and this ISIS. And so many people, and also it used religious also as a weapon, and it misguided the Kashmiri youth, and always it wanted to create a chaos and etc. Then over a period of time, in 2014, the present government, Indian government under leadership of Narendra Modi came to the power, and then they were able to reduce the violence from year to year slowly, and they have a strong control. Then they took a very revolutionary decision, because until 2019, Kashmir have a special status. It used to have its own constitution, its own flag, and many of the Indian rules, regulations are not applicable in Kashmir. So the government, Indian government decided that it is not fair with other states. So they abolished these two important articles, 370 and 35A. Then they established Jammu and Kashmir as a union territory, and also they separated the Buddhist dominated Ladakh region as also a separate union territory. Then the last 2 years, things were improving a lot in Jammu and Kashmir. There was a peace and there was a stability, and people are going to the colleges, universities, and they were working, and so many infrastructure projects. And foreign investors are also showing a lot of interest in development in Jammu and Kashmir. So that the Pakistan, its military and its ISI didn't like. They didn't want a peaceful, stable and a prosperous Jammu and Kashmir. So they sent recently, they sent a large number of terrorists. Then they also encouraged the local radicals to kill innocent Hindus, Sikhs, even Muslims, street vendors, migrant workers, laborers. So it is a very bad situation. Just in October, can you believe, 11 civilians were killed. One school principal, one taxi driver. Then we have, they also killed 9 soldiers. Of course, the government then immediately took stringent measures, and they were able to kill 15 terrorists. But then also we have in the newspapers that the ISI gave a blueprint for terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir to do this. There were 22 instructions. So in my conclusion, we can say only that Pakistan's dream of taking over of Jammu and Kashmir, I think it will never achieve, because people there do not support Pakistan and its policies, because here we have a country which supports officially the terrorist groups. The best example is, for example, since 2018, Pakistan has been on the Financial Action Task Force grey list. This FATF is a global financial watchdog. So this is a proof that here is a government which is supporting terrorists. The same thing it did in Afghanistan, sponsoring or patronizing the Taliban. And now, so this is very dangerous for Jammu and Kashmir. But we can only counter this terrorism and separatism and this radicalism through economic development. So I will hope only that the government will take strict action against these infiltrators and cross-border terrorism, and then the government must create a peaceful, stable, and prosperous, stable situation in Jammu and Kashmir. If they control this terrorism problem, I think Jammu and Kashmir will prosper again like in the olden days. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Veramala, for political analysis of what happens in Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience from India and Indonesia who follow our streaming on YouTube, we are discussion international seminar with the topic Kashmir Carnage, who started it and what had happened on October 22nd, 1947. It is organized by Center for Southeast Asian Studies, CSEAS, Indonesia. The next speaker is Mr. Utpal Kaul. He is Indian coordinator of Global Pandit Diaspora, speaking from New Delhi. Please allow me to read the short biography. Mr. Utpal Kaul is a community activist and leader and spokesperson of KV community for more than 4 decades. As young scholar of Kashmir University, he was president of Student Union. Mr. Utpal Kaul has participated in national and international debates and seminars on Kashmir. He has led many protests to get justice for the community, and he already met presidents, prime minister, and parliamentarian members to apprise them on Kashmir situation. Mr. Utpal has published more than 100 books on Kashmir, and now he is also regulars on TV debates. Please welcome Mr. Utpal Kaul for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Selamat siang, Indonesia.
Selamat siang.
Good afternoon, namaste, Indonesia. And I am so privileged and I am so lucky that my guru and my teacher, he was director when I was pursuing my PhD in Center of Central Asian Studies, Kashmir University. It is always a pleasure to listen thoughtful, scholarly, and very, very correct data of Dr. Professor Kashinath Pandit, Padma Shri. Now, Mr. Veramala has given a wonderful detail, a historical detail of Kashmir, and very, very informative for those also who know very little about Kashmir. And he made very from sky to earth something of everything in his short speech. But let me give you a connection between Indonesia and Kashmir. 2000 years back, we had a young, great scholar of Buddhism from Kashmir, and his name was Gunavarman. Gunavarman traveled from Kashmir to Sri Lanka, and it was his first journey to formally convert as many as into Buddhism in Sri Lanka. And this message has already gone to Java and to main islands there. And the queen saw the dream. And in the dream, she saw a young Buddhist monk coming in a boat to Java. And she told it to her husband. And actually, the next day, this monk, Gunavarman, came to Java. And he became the Raja Guru. The king declared him as the Guru. And he was formally the first person, because Indonesia and all these islands around were very, very, in a way, Hindu at that time. So this was among the first conversions from Hinduism to Buddhism by Gunavarman, who was a Kashmiri. And later on, spending some years in Java, he traveled to China to work for his mission. I thank you organizers for this very important, it's very thoughtful that you decided that let the world know, let the Southeast Asian people, particularly Indonesia and the people around the globe know about what happened on 22nd of October 1947. And we cannot get a better person than Professor Kashinath Pandit, whom I have heard many times, who is a living legend here in India and in Kashmir. So we heard him, and as he also said that he was only 16 years old and he was eyewitness to all the events what happened at that time. I am going to add very small points here and there. Basically, if we understand the 1947 Act of India and Pakistan, the Act, it was that the British India, where the Muslims will be in majority, it will form the Pakistan, and the Hindu majority will go to India. And it was freedom for the kings. They were 564. They can join India and Pakistan. And it was done accordingly. But Maharaja took time because it was a very tricky situation for him, because he was a Hindu Maharaja and majority was Muslim. It wasn't a big majority. I think it was only 60, 62. Now people say 67, but it was 62 anyway. And British were persuading him to be independent or join Pakistan. They were giving him the idea that your all trade is because of water, through water. And so you will be a big, your forest, these wood will be sold there. There were so many schemes going on behind the scene. What we call the game of English, the game of British divide and rule. So, as I totally agree with Mr. Vermola that we thank Pakistan for many things, that if Pakistan would not have attacked Kashmir on 22nd of October, India had no chance. It could take months or it could take years to decide. Many people have interviewed Maharaja and the Prime Minister and the Chief Justice and judges at that time and bureaucrats. And they came to know that Maharaja, it was in mind of Maharaja that he will join Indian Union. But he was taking time. And at that time, we had a leader in Kashmir, the top leader, Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah, who was the founder of the National Muslim Conference in 1931. And later on in 1935-36, he changed the name from National Muslim Conference to National Conference. He was not given much importance by Jinnah or Liaquat Ali Khan. So he was not sure if I will suggest people of Kashmir, Muslim majority, to join Pakistan, what will be his status there? They may put him in jail. So he got the friendship with Nehru. And so, in short, it was not accession done by Maharaja. It was also done by Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah. So it was with the majority of Muslims. And when Kashinathji said everything about when the raiders came, and Sheikh Abdullah and the Kashmiri militia, the Maharaja had less troops. They were fighting, but in the meanwhile, in Srinagar, they were giving the slogan, "Hum Kashmiri hain tayyar. Hum Kashmiri hain tayyar. Khabardar. We Kashmiris are ready." So it was one Muslim in Baramulla. He just changed the course for 2 days. The target of Pakistani army and these tribals was given that they have to get the head of Sheikh Mahmud Abdullah. They would get today's, if we have the today's rate, $10 million for his head. But one National Conference worker from Baramulla didn't show them the road straight to Srinagar. He put them to other side of the villages, which was 2 days. It delayed 2 days going to Srinagar and capturing the airport. And then he was also caught. His name was Makbul Shirwani. He was caught and he was brutally killed. As Professor Kashinathji said, they came from 3 directions. One was Muzaffarabad, one was Baramulla, and one was from Karna, Karna, these 3 sides. And they were nearly numbering 15 to 20,000. We say basically tribals. What they did a master plan. They were making the plan for 2 months. And one plan was, in senior level, leaders were negotiating with Maharaja. They were not giving any kind of impression that we are going to attack you. So they were saying the agreement of standstill and we will supply you things, but it was all false. There was so much of scarcity in Kashmir. Even my grandmother and grandfather, and my father was also school going at that time. They were telling us for 2 months or 1.5 months, they had no salt because salt was coming from the other side, and there was no petrol and diesel because all supplies were stopped by Pakistan because supplies were coming from the other side. And if we talk of, so the other side, what they did, they were preparing. And it was basically the Pakistani army, Pakistani militia. They were giving training. Otherwise, how can a Pakhtun or a Afridi or from, how come they know about the location, strategy, geography, roads, ethnic groups? They have no idea about it. They were just ruthless killers with these big 303 guns. They didn't know any strategy. Yes, they were only told them, Mali Ghanim, that whatever you will capture, you will get share of that. You will get, these Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiris are very rich. They have a lot of gold. They have a lot of cash. They have a lot of silver. So you will take that. And if you get the women also, you can enjoy, you can take them also. So that kind of incentive was given by Pakistani generals, Pakistani strategicians to these Taliban type of people whom we call now as tribals. So they attacked Muzaffarabad and they attacked Baramulla and they attacked Karna. There is a book called Krishan Ganga Ki God Mein, in the lap of Krishan Ganga. Krishan Ganga is a river nowadays in POK, Pak Occupied Kashmir. It is between Karna and Sharda. They now call it Neelam Valley and Neelam River. But traditional name is Krishan Ganga. And so many Sikh ladies and Hindu ladies that they must not be caught. They jumped and they died. And can you believe how brutal they were, these tribals? They got the dead bodies and they were raping dead bodies. They were raping dead bodies, and such kind of torture, such kind of ruthlessness was shown by these tribals. And same was done with this in Baramulla, with the Hindu ladies, with the Sikh ladies, and even the Christian nuns. They attacked the church, they attacked the hospital and caught these nurses and the nuns and raped them also. And in Muzaffarabad, Kotli, Bimbar, all these places, they attacked and raped women and looted whatsoever they had. In fact, they attacked nearly 500 villages, or I can say more than 500 villages, these tribals. And they, as Professor Kashinaji Pandit said, they reached almost Shilting. Shilting is just 10 kilometers away from airport, even less than that from airport. But the Patiala regiment, as they reached by that time on 26th of October. But I will take it to what kind of human tragedy it was. That there were local rascals also. They took the advantage of, as Panta Saab said now, it was 5 or 6 or 2 tribals with the these 303 guns. Then some locals will go and show them is a Hindu house, this is a Sikh house, is a Christian house, and kill them, loot them. They have a lot of money. And this was not only in Baramulla, and it was in district Baramulla. They almost reached up to the villages of very near to airport called Sebdan and Vathor and other places. And some Taliban type of people and their sympathizers, they looted. In Baramulla, in Sopore, I have my relations, how their houses were burned, how they looted there, and in the compounds they were killing the family members. And what small kind of research when I did, it was not 5,000. 11,000 people were killed. 11,000 civilians were killed by these tribals, or I can say these Pakistani army. It is better to call them Pakistani militia, Pakistani army, which was directly controlling everything. They were controlling all the situation. But those 11,000 people gave great sacrifice. And India moved so fast. And I may tell you, after Second World War, it was the biggest military operation in whole of the world. We have a Zojila Pass here. Even today, after 72 years, it is very difficult to go on the top of Zojila Pass. We made road only in 1962, 63 on Zojila Pass. This is a pass going to Ladakh, going to Dras Valley. But Indian military was so fast and so under the correct leadership that the big tanks reached Zojila Pass. And it was because of that whole of Dras, Kargil, and whole of Ladakh was saved. And if Nehru was too gentle, and UN and Russia and America requested for ceasefire, if we would not have done ceasefire, we could have taken Muzaffarabad back, we could have taken Gilgit back, and could have reached up to Baltistan and taken Baltistan also. Because Indian army was totally in strength, and it was pursuing this pursuit very fast and very strategically. But ceasefire was done, and now we call it LOC, line of actual control. So 33% of Kashmir, 33% of Jammu and Kashmir, Maharaja's territory, is still with Pakistan, which we want back. And one day we call it POJK, Pak occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And now we have, in 1994, under the Prime Ministership of P.V. Narasimha Rao, we have a unanimous resolution of Parliament from the opposition to from Congress to National Conference to BJP, all political parties, unanimous resolution of Parliament. The resolution is that we have nothing to discuss with Pakistan about Jammu and Kashmir, but we have only one point to discuss. That is when they are going to vacate POK, when they are going to vacate Pak-occupied Jammu Kashmir, that area, when they are, that is the only thing we are going to negotiate with them. And I am sure, because people living in Muzaffarabad, people living in Kotali, in Bimbar, in Gilgit, in POK, nobody is happy there because there is no development at all. We have nearly 10 to 15 universities in Jammu and Kashmir. There is hardly 2 universities there. I may not talk of the roads or hospitals or how Kashmir is so touristic and the beauty and other things. It cannot be compared what Pakistan, how Pakistan is treating these people, how Pakistan is treating people living in Gilgit. They are like second-rate citizens. They are like slaves. But Pakistan's obsession and Pakistan's hate, not obsession for Jammu and Kashmir, but hate for India. In fact, if I take 1 minute and tell you, there was no need of India getting divided in 1947. It was a British trick, and British used some Muslim leadership, and that is known as Muslim Conference. There's Muslim League. And because we eat same, we talk same, we have same language, we have same dress, we have same food, we have same everything. Only difference is religion. They wanted majority Muslim, and so they wanted a Muslim land for that. But if you see today also, after Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country in the world, and I salute the people of Indonesia, I salute government of and the opposition in Indonesia, how harmoniously and how nicely they are living. They have changed the system of prayers. From Hinduism, they became Buddhists. From Buddhists, they became Muslims. But at the same time, they have kept that cultural heritage. So the harmony is wonderful. And everybody in our schools in India, in our colleges and our lectures, we give examples of Indonesia, how harmoniously this wonderful society is living. And we could have done same in India. India is the second largest Muslim country in the world. It is the second largest Muslim country in the world. Double than Muslims living in Pakistan, double than Muslims living in Bangladesh. What was the need of having a separate country? Even now, they are separate, but we could have lived harmoniously. And one day, if India, Pakistan, Bangladesh will have some kind of connection, it will be the world's biggest power, because we have very good agriculture, we have very good horticulture, we have good industry, we have educated people in India. Now, if we compare what happened to Pakistan and what happened to India, now we have yesterday completed 1 billion vaccinations in India. We have 4 vaccines in India. How India is making progress, but Pakistan has also won progress. The ISI is the notorious terrorist founding country in the world. It is exporting terrorists all over the world. And now they have, even the Bin Laden was caught in Pakistan. And I myself, Utpal Kol myself, I am the victim of genocide. I was doing PhD, all my data, 32 years back, all my data, all my publication house. My grandfather was one of the celebrated writers on Kashmir, Himalaya, and tourism. He has written 10 books. We had 5,000 books in Kashmir. We had a 5-story house. It was burned. It was burned by these people motivated by ISI. And so my community, 15,000 houses were burned. 500 temples were totally burnt and destroyed. And nearly 15 to 2,000 people were killed in 2 days, in 1.5, 2 months in 90. And still, when the things were improving, when the every Kashmiri was happy that peace had at least returned to Kashmir, and now is the question of development in Kashmir. But there are these ISI elements, they cannot, they are jealous of the peace. And some Kashmiris, they become fool. Either they get money from them or they get some kind of motivation. They kill their own people. The tragedy is that Pakistan is sending 1% terrorists from Pakistan, but they motivate 10 more in Kashmir. And so the Kashmiris are killing Kashmiris, their own brethren, own people. We had 3 lakh. 3 lakh means 300,000 migrant workers. These migrant workers were working in the fields for cultivation. They were working in the fruit industry. They were working tilling the land. They were working in industry. They were working in construction. They were carpenters. They were masons. And then they were street vendors selling small things or small snacks. And just to create a kind of anarchy, they killed these small poor people. And now see the Indian democracy, see how India is, that there are 1 million. There are 1 million people from Jammu and Kashmir doing business in the rest of the country. No problem. We have Kashmir. As a Kashmiri, I am proud of my products, from dry fruit to saffron, from carpet to shawls. We have wonderful things here from Kashmir, and they are sold in nearly 200 to 300 destinations in India. No
Please,
problem.
3 minutes
They
more,
have
Mr.
all the right.
Utpal. 3 minutes
Yes.
more, please. Thank you.
Okay. So I thank you very much for organizing this wonderful webinar. And we have to tell the story of truth of Kashmir. And we hope and we are sure that one day peace will emerge in Kashmir. Peace will be in Kashmir. And I invite all of you, please come and enjoy in Kashmir and have wonderful apples and have a wonderful, what we call shikara ride, go in the boat in Dal Lake. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Utpal Kaul, for excellent and wonderful presentation and connect with the culture of both country, Indonesia and India. And also we do have an excellent presentation also from Professor Kasih Pandita and Veramala Anjaya. And also we do have from our seminar that history is a very good lesson for our humanity, for our civilization in both of our countries. And please allow me just to add what is the conclusion from Veramala about the current situation. So please allow me a humble presentation, Professor Kasih, Mr. Utpal. I would like to just touch of the current situation as the hope and a result of the struggling of the historicals and of the hero of Jammu and Kashmir in maintains the stability now. As we know, just a couples few and of the what we call is Jammu and Kashmir. And also we do have, as explains with Veramala, the situation now. And also I just want to touch the current development as a result of the history explains very wonderful for senior scholars from India that it seems to me that Jammu and Kashmir is in progress. So the current developments, the current situation under the government of India has a benefit for most people of Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, this is a consistency of the central government, a changings of the status of Jammu and Kashmir, and it seems that the more and the benefit situation for Jammu and Kashmir in terms of well-beings, in terms of welfare from the current government. So this is the numbers indicate that a very rich and very good Jammu and Kashmir situation now. And look at the situation, the holes now, as Pak Veramala said, Jammu and Kashmir is well known as paradise on earth. So this is the gems. This is very precious lands of humans being, and then Jammu and Kashmir, of course, we call it paradise on earth because naturally pollution free, provide a very good environment for tourism and beauty of landscape. Also very rich and creative, you know, from with the horticultural and also the handicraft. If you look at the next slide, this is how the current Jammu and Kashmir situation for the future is very promising lands, promising the situation for the India, not only for Jammu and Kashmir, for India, the whole contribution for the current economic of India is growing, increasingly very good. And also this is because of the competency of the current government, also, but the good management in an economic. So in conclusion, it seems that the economic situation of Jammu and Kashmir in good shapes now. Of course, the history has left a very good lesson for Jammu and Kashmir and India that this must be maintained, the stability based on economic development. But because I believe that if we do have a benefit, the current government also what's a threat of terrorism, as Pak Veramala Anjaya said, will be decreased significantly due to the, the government has put attention for the benefit of the peoples in Jammu and Kashmir. And I have also information about the current development in the numbers, in the policy, infrastructure, and so on. But the conclusion for my very short, introduction for discussion after this seminar is that Jammu and Kashmir very important location, not only just strategic location because of between the countries, but also has a very rich peoples, and has a very beautiful landscape. So a lot of things I think we can learn from Jammu and Kashmir. So we can have a few understanding from the international seminar that the history has left our lessons, as said and quote, now is a gift for the Jammu and Kashmir. It's a gift for Indian. It's a gift for a human being that the peace should be maintained and should be benefit for the people in Jammu and Kashmir. That is a very short introduction for discussion. Professor Kasih Pandita and Mr. Upal Kapul and Peramalah. Now is time for discussion. We do have some question for all of the speakers regarding our topics. Also, I have comments and question from the YouTube. But let's see the first question from our list of question for all of the speakers. Now, the first question is, Pakistan has been complaining about the situation of Muslim in Jammu and Kashmir. Is Jammu and Kashmir the only region in India where Muslims live? And how many Muslims are there in India? So this is the question is put the context of Jammu and Kashmir in a big picture of India. Please, Mr. Professor Kasih Pandita may have explains or answer for the first question, please. Thank you. Please unmute the microphone, Professor. Thank you.
Pakistan's strategy in Kashmir has been to whip up religious passion among the people who are majority of whom are Muslims. Now, if Pakistan is truly caring for the Muslims all over the world, as she says usually in the sessions of OIC, then the charity begins at home. Why is there turmoil in Balochistan? Why is there turmoil among Sindhis? Why is there Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan in its northwest frontier or Pakhtunkhwa, where they imposed Zarb-e-Azab military plan and killed 78,000 Pakhtuns? And why did Bangladesh, a Muslim region, separate from Pakistan after fighting Pakistan in a war and become an independent state, where Pakistan, according to the report of Hamoud Rahman, the Chief Justice of Pakistan, who was assigned the duty of preparing a report on atrocities in Bangladesh by Pakistan Army, reported that 1 million people, more than 1 million people were killed, massacred by the Pakistani troops, and 3 million women were raped and killed. So much so, Bangladesh has a big department of looking after children with unknown parents. So I would like our friend who put this question, I would like him to take my answer into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, Asif, I want to say something.
Please, Pak Peramala.
Yeah. So actually, the main propaganda of Pakistan for so many years that Muslims have been suffering in Jammu and Kashmir, and that's why they want to make this issue a global issue. But many people outside India and Pakistan do not know much about Muslims in India. Then actually many people do not know that Kashmir is the Muslim majority state, only one. It is wrong. Actually, we have now Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory. We have a union territory called Lakshadweep, where 96.58% of the people are Muslims. Of course, it is a small territory. 96.58% of the people are Muslims in Lakshadweep. It is an Indian union territory in Arabian Sea. Then Kashmir is the number 2, and we also have Ladakh, now union territory. So these 3 union territories are Muslim majority regions in India. These 3 officially. Then many people do not know that, as Mr. Utpal Kaul rightly said, India has 200 million Muslims. 200 million Muslims. Why the whole world, including the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, also they never allow India to represent there? It was because of this simply Pakistan's propaganda. Pakistan blocks in OIC that Indian Muslims are not allowed to represent. They can criticize what is happening to the Muslims of the Jammu and Kashmir. So in that 200 million people, if you take how many Muslims are there in the Jammu and Kashmir, only 8 million out of 200. That means 4%. So you are talking about 4% of the Muslims. Sorry to say, I mean, I'm not saying that. So you are talking about the suffering of 4 million people only. But we have 196 million Muslims who are living peacefully, harmoniously with other religions, Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, and everybody. So it is completely wrong that Muslims have been suffering in India, because we have 196 million, which is, I mean, a very huge number. Even the OIC also did not take notice. Actually, India deserves a place in the Muslim world because it has 200 million people. Then in India and other states also, we have the biggest Muslim population is in Assam, in West Bengal, and Uttar Pradesh and Kerala. So we have so many states, not just only Jammu and Kashmir. We have so many states where Muslims live. Even I come from Telangana, where in my province also, it was once ruled by a Muslim ruler, and we have a large number of Muslim population. We didn't have any problem. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I have a word?
Please,
Yeah, please.
Mr. Utpal Kaul, could you add something?
You see, it is a big Pakistani propaganda.
Yeah.
Let the Pakistan and ISI know how much arms they have supplied in last 32 years in Kashmir to make trouble for all Kashmiris, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and everybody. Just to show in Kashmir, people are unhappy, there is anarchy, and so they will join Pakistan, they want independence. Arms which were used in First World War, the total arms used in First World War, more than that were supplied by Pakistan to Kashmiri terrorists, jihadis. Nearly 500,000 AK-47 rifles, 500,000 Kalashnikov guns, explosives, rocket launchers, and what for? If they supply this kind of arms, deadly arms to create such a big trouble, what should India do? What should the Indian army and the Indian security forces do? In fact, the role of Indian army, the role of Indian security forces is to save Kashmiri Muslims, save Kashmiri people of Jammu and Kashmir from these Pakistani intruders. That is my answer. And one more thing I have to tell you, that India is such a democracy. President of India was a Muslim. Vice President was Muslim. Indian cricket captain was Muslim. Indian film actors are captain. Top heroes of India, top stars in India. Indian hockey captain was a Muslim. And then from Kashmiri Muslim majority, which is just tiny in India, 10 ministers in union cabinet. That's a big thing. To be the cabinet minister from a muscular minority from Kashmiri Muslims. So India has opened heart. India has given everything, but Pakistan is in the heart, hate mode. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ukaul, for the very interesting answer. And then we can continue discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience from India and Indonesia who follow us through the YouTube streaming. Let's see the next question. It is from YouTube live chat. This is from Dorma Ringan Napitu, I think from India. This is a special question for Mr. Utpal. Very interesting question. I think Kashmir is a long history, battle between India and Pakistan. What is in your mind? Yeah. If you ask to request any support from Indonesia or other countries to solve Kashmir problem. So I repeat the question for Mr. Utpal, but Mr. Professor Kasih Pandit can answer too. What is in your mind if you ask to request any support from Indonesia or other countries to solve Kashmir problem?
I can answer first, then my teacher will answer.
Please,
See,
Professor.
Very simple.
Yeah.
In fact, we Pakistanis and Indians, we understand each other's language.
Mm.
We can talk to each other and say what we want from each other, but let them stop terrorism. Let them stop sending arms to Kashmir. And our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, he said that when you are firing, when you are making bombs, in the cry of these, how can we talk? We cannot listen to each other. You stop it, we are brothers. We can talk with each other. And we need a support. We want Indonesians to play a role and ask the Pakistanis, stop sending arms to Kashmir and let you be friends. Send them flowers, and we are ready to receive flowers. We are ready to receive sweets, and we are going to send them sweets, but not guns. Don't kill Kashmiris with your guns. That is my answer. Thank you very much.
Please, Professor, if you want continue at something very interesting.
Yes. I must endorse the view of Mr. Utpal Kaul. In the beginning of his address, he said that Indonesia is a shining star in the Asian continent in terms of cultural and social dynamics. And we very much value the excellent and scientific synthesis which Indonesia has brought about in religious perceptions, in ways of life, to live a peaceful life and coexist in that system. I think Indonesia is the only country in the world with a Muslim majority, but most aptly fit to tell the people of Kashmir that Indonesia has been able to make great progress through synthesized culture, and they can also emulate this example by developing a synthesis in the culture, because Kashmir too has a great past. Its pre-Islamic civilization is rich and attractive, and its post-Islamic history is also very attractive in so many ways. So you are best qualified to advise and teach the people of Kashmir to develop the concept of a synthesized civilization, for which Government of India is out to extend the fullest cooperation, and the Indian civil society itself is prepared to extend the fullest cooperation possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for very exciting and very interesting the answer of that's a question from YouTube audience, and this is I feel this is our conversation and international webinar increasingly interesting, yeah, in this discussion, because it touches such a very unique question, and also the question raised for the whole peoples regarding the Jammu and Kashmir. So this international seminar, ladies and gentlemen, and audience from India and Indonesia. So let's proceed to the next question. This is also a very interesting question. I read it. The question is for all the distinguished speaker is what the legal right do Pakistan has in Jammu and Kashmir? Of course, this is the very sensitive question, but do we have in our seminar can frankly answer? And it is said that frequently some people says that India illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So the question, what the legal right do Pakistan has in Jammu and Kashmir, and whether it is right that some says that India illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this is a very delicate question, but I believe Professor Kasih and Utpal and Veramala would like to explain a little bit of this question. I ask Professor first, please.
Yes, this question is asked in many seminars, and Pakistan raises such questions in almost all international platforms. But my counter question is, was Pakistan's incursion attack of 1947 legal? Is Pakistan's occupation of 1/3 of Kashmir territory legal? What legality? Then there is the resolution of the Security Council 1948 and 49. The resolution says that Pakistan will withdraw all its fighting forces and others from the part of Kashmir under its occupation and make the way for a plebiscite in Kashmir, reposing central authority in Srinagar, and India will reduce its military presence to minimum. And under the supervision of the United Nations, a plebiscite will be held. This is clause number 1 of 1948, 5 January 1948 resolution. Why has not Pakistan withdrawn its fighting forces? Rather, it has reinforced its troops on all of the fronts, brought in the heaviest war machinery, guns, tanks, everything, and finally conceded in the United Nations Security Council that, yes, its troops are very much fighting in Kashmir. So India waited and waited and waited. Pakistan never withdrew it. Then India decided that we cannot stop our march towards progress of the people. We cannot deny them the right to progress. India went on with its own work, with its own agenda. Therefore, how does the question of India having illegally occupied Kashmir, the Transfer of Power Act clearly said that 562 princely states had the power, the rulers had the power to decide the fate of their country, of their states. And Kashmir ruler decided. He signed the instrument of accession. And India never sent its troops unless the instrument of accession was signed. Has Pakistan any instrument of accession? None. The Kashmir ruler signed the standstill agreement. Within days, Pakistan broke it and sent its troops. Therefore, Pakistan's claim that India is in illegal occupation is fabricated, has no basis, and has to be challenged tooth and nail. Pakistan's presence, that's what the people of POK today in Gilgit, in Baltistan, in everywhere, they are raising the same cry that Pakistan is in illegal occupation of the part of Jammu and Kashmir state. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Professor Kasi.
I will,
Ramala Anjaya and then Mr. Utpal Kaul.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Professor Kashi Panditji. Well said. The question is here, every year, many times, the Pakistan and Pakistan ministers, Pakistan media, Pakistan missions, they always say in the international platforms that Kashmir is illegally occupied by India. Illegally. Okay. My question is whether Pakistan ever controlled Jammu and Kashmir, because Pakistan was born only in 1947. Before that, they didn't have any legal entity. It was part of British India, and it was there for several centuries. It was a part of the Indian emperors, etc., etc. Then let us see in this case, very interesting case. Jammu and Kashmir region was ruled by Dogra rulers from 1846 to 1947. 1846 to 1947. 101 years. They ruled this region. 101 years, not a single day. And then this gentleman, one of the kings, Gulab Singh, he legally bought this Kashmir Valley from the East India Company. He paid the money. And that this ruler was from Jammu region, that is around half of the Jammu and Kashmir region. And then he bought it legally. Then they ruled 101 years. So in order to decide, this Jammu and Kashmir must join Pakistan or India, who had the legal right. than the ruler of the kingdom. Who had? He has been, their family has been ruling this region 101 years. Okay, that is one. So that means it is very clear he was the legal authority to decide its future. Okay, let's talk about the people. Then people led by the National Conference, Sheikh Abdullah, they constitute the majority of the people. Majority of the people, all these years, from Jammu and Kashmir, they didn't want to join Pakistan. Pakistan cannot force people to join. Then the Pakistan argument is simply, oh, they are Muslims, we are Muslims, they must join. It is not legal at all. There is no argument in that. And then Professor Kashinath Pandit rightly said, it was the Pakistan illegally entered into Jammu and Kashmir, occupied Jammu and Kashmir, killed Kashmiri people. It has been still killing until this day. So they are the illegal force. I mean, if you see the facts, they are very clear. That's my answer. Thank you. Yeah.
I totally agree with Professor Kashinath Pandit and Viramalaji. I want to add one thing that, as Kashinathji also said, India was divided into British India, which I earlier said, British India and the Indian kings. British India means Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, and in these areas, or Dhaka, or Karachi, it was decided where there is majority of Muslims, it will go to Pakistan, and the majority Hindu will remain with India. And then it was also seen the geographical line. But it was the right of the king, 562 kings, they would decide. And Maharaja Hari Singh was forced by Pakistan to have accession with India. And then the three great leaders of at that time, Mr. Premnath Dogra, the leader of the Dogras in Jammu, Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah, the leader of National Conference and Muslim majority of Kashmir, and then the Ladakhi Kashyak Bakola, the head Lama and the head of the Buddhists of Ladakh, decided, all the three decided with India. So Pakistan had nothing, neither the legal position nor the people's support. So they were trying to do it forcibly. So on 22nd October, they sent the army, which they call as the tribals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Utpal, Professor Kasi Pandit, for discussion about the second question. But we still have about around 15 minutes left. But we do feel that I myself, as moderator, following discussion is very, very lively, interesting, and have maybe the audience will have a chance to broaden the horizon discussion on this Jammu and Kashmir territory and Jammu and Kashmir under current government of India. This is very interesting. Let's move to the next question. We are going to read the question. This is a very interesting discussion for the next couple of minutes. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished speakers, it says that after abolition of Article 370 in 2019, Jammu and Kashmir was mostly peaceful for 2 years. That is the situation. But why all the sudden there are so many terror attacks on the ground? Particularly on civilian in Jammu and Kashmir. So the latest development indicate discussion that a lot of many terror attacks in latest development. Even though the last 2 years since 2019, the Jammu and Kashmir is very peaceful in their life. Any explanation, Mr. Utpal Kaul? Please go ahead.
Article 370 was unnecessarily introduced in Indian Constitution. It was not needed. It was something extra. And so With the passage of time, after 70 years, almost 70 years, it was abolished. Then with it was also another sub-law that is known as 35A. I may let you know that 35A was that 500,000 to 1 million people who came from the other side of Pakistan, other side of Kashmir, which is forcibly occupied by Pakistan. So they are living in Jammu. They were not still citizens. They could vote for Indian Parliament, but they could not vote for state of our Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. So government of India, Narendra Modi's government thought, let us make the reform and make Jammu and Kashmir as par with India. Then there were, we call it separate flag, separate constitution, separate prime minister, like these three things. So it will be at par with the rest of the country. Because Jammu and Kashmir is the integral part of India, let us have one constitution, one flag. So it should be abolished. Simultaneously, government had a plan to invest $1 billion US. I am saying once again, $1 billion US in Jammu and Kashmir for development. And so everybody was thinking, after a long, there were nearly 1 million tourists, and it may cross 3 million tourists to Kashmir. Fruit business, other industries were going to develop. IT industry was coming to Kashmir. Electronics industry was coming to Kashmir. And Pakistan was very much, in a way, afraid, and they were not knowing what to do. And so they played the same trick, sending few boys with money, with weapons, to start some kind of anarchy in Kashmir. So it's a Pakistani game. They won't be successful. Kashmiris want peace, Kashmiris want prosperity, and they want to grow with the rest of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Upakawa. Maybe Professor Kasih Pandita will add something, please.
Yes, very briefly. This is a very interesting question and must be understood very clearly. When the Indian Constitution was being drawn, early 1950s, the Kashmir leadership, that is Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah and his NC colleagues, National Conference colleagues, they went to Delhi and they said, we want a sort of autonomy because we are a Muslim majority and India is a Hindu majority country, and in order to feel safe and secure, we want to have a sort of autonomy. The Indian Constituent Assembly at that time did not accept, but Prime Minister Nehru showed his tendency of supporting Sheikh Abdullah's point of view. What India had done at that time, I will not go into the history, but simply refer that the Indian left at that time in 40s and 50s was largely influenced by the Soviet, by the Leninist Marxist ideology. And in his great speech address to the people of the East, Lenin had said that the Soviet Union could consider giving autonomy to certain regions on certain grounds. So this was in the mind of Nehru. On that basis, he proposed a sort of autonomy for J&K. And because he was a towering personality, he could influence the parliament. He influenced the parliament, and Article 370 was introduced, giving special, it was not called autonomy, but it was called special status. to J&K state. They will have their flag, they will have their constitution, they will have their assembly, and no law passed by the Indian Parliament would be applicable to this state unless it was passed by the state assembly. So there was opposition to it. Even the law minister of that time, when Sheikh Abdullah met him, he listened to him, and then he told him, I don't want to make another Pakistan here in India, in Kashmir. We will not grant it. No member, no cabinet member was prepared to grant it, but he did it. Now, unfortunately, very unfortunately, the government, the majority government in J&K state, which is the Muslim majority, they were greatly from the very beginning influenced by Pakistan. Pakistan tried to influence them, and they behaved in a very suspicious manner. They would blow hot and cold in the same breath. And they would try to misuse this Article 370. The simplest example which you will, I'm looking at time, the simplest example which you will understand in Indonesia is that the government, the elected government, the Article 370 essentially meant that no non-state should settle down, is allowed, permitted to settle down in Kashmir, not to buy property, not to have jobs, nothing in Kashmir. That's the essence of this article. But this government, it settled nearly 80,000 Rohingyas, who traveled all the way from Burma, Myanmar, to Jammu. They were settled by the previous government, by the Muslim majority government in Jammu, which is a Hindu majority region, not in Kashmir, which is a Muslim majority region. And in Jammu region, they were settled along the border, which is vulnerable to Pakistani intrusion. Now, if they were really sincere to honor Article 370, how did they allow 89,000 Rohingyas to come and settle down? These people were given in months, in just 2 or 3 months, they were given the Aadhaar card, the identity card, residence card, ration card, and electric card, everything short of permanent residence. All the way was paved for their permanent residence. This was an alarming situation. And one of the main reasons why the center had to abrogate Article 370 was this and other reasons. To say the very briefly, thank you very much.
I would like to ask Mr. Veramala for the answer question and including the closing statement because due of time of international our seminar now. Please.
Thank you, Asif. Just I want to say, according to the South Asia Terrorism Portal, in 2018, there were 206 terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. 86 civilians were killed, 95 security forces were killed. Then this number has come down in 2019, only from 206 to 140 terror attacks. 42 people, almost half the civilians, the number of death toll was come down. And in 2020, again, the number of terror attacks, number of people died were come down. And on the economic front, the infrastructure and the government, new policies, investors, and everything was going normally, smoothly. That if Pakistan says that we care about Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir, why you will not allow them to live in peace and prosper? Then, so that didn't make them happy. How come Kashmiris are living in peace? There was no violence, nothing is happening. Then people are working and earning more money and developing, going to school. So that is the main reason for this recent surge in the violence. The Pakistan because now also on the other side in Afghanistan, then the US left, and it used to harbor many terrorist groups in Afghanistan along with in cooperation with the Taliban. So now many of the terrorists do not have, frankly speaking, no job. No job, I mean, no reason to attack. So now they are slowly moving the terrorist groups which are operating in Afghanistan, moving to Jammu and Kashmir, and also maybe in the future more and more terrorist groups may come. So their main intention is to create chaos in Jammu and Kashmir. That is the one, and to create divisions on communal lines. Even the Lieutenant Governor, the Jammu and Kashmir also said the same thing. Their main intention is to create divisions on communal lines, like Muslims, non-Muslims, locals, non-locals, and create a chaos and terror. So these are the main reasons. Because the ISI and the military generals in Pakistan, they do not care about the welfare of the Muslims wherever they are. So they want only their objectives, their interests. So that is the main reason. Thank you. Then the closing ceremony, I think India and Pakistan has a very long porous border. I think Indian government, after gaining a lot of experience for all these more than 74 years, they should think how to make this porous border a strict one. Like, for example, if you see the history, like Chinese built the Great Wall of China against Mongol invasion. And also I have seen in Morocco, they built a sand wall to stop the separatist guerrillas to attack. So maybe I think India must think in the future how to tighten this border, how to impenetrable border. But of course, now the Pakistan is using drones to supply weapons through the drones, etc. So I think in the future, so if they control this terrorism problem, if it make it difficult for Pakistan to infiltrate into the Kashmir, I think Kashmir will have a very bright future, and they will have a lot of opportunities. Kashmiri people, main culture is tolerant and inclusivity. They don't fight each other. So that is the very first thing we must know. The Kashmir has been for centuries, it is well known for tolerance and inclusivity. So, and we have in the Kashmiri Pandit side, we have so many scholars, so many very smart people. On the Muslim side also, we have very intelligent and very hardworking people. So if this Pakistan, if the Indian government is able to stop this Pakistan terror activities, then there will be a peace and there will be a development. Definitely, Kashmir will have a very bright future. Thank you.
Mr. Utpal Kaur, do you have something conclusion for our international seminar? Please?
First of all, I once again thank you very much. You have done brilliantly this moderation of this program, and I am once again thanking people of Indonesia and your organization who organized it. And I am sure if people of Indonesia and world consciousness will persuade Pakistan to be true friend and true brother of India, one day peace will win in our subcontinent. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Professor Kasih Pandita, please, for closing statement.
Thank you. Thank the organizers for staging this important webinar. I have attended hundreds of webinars and symposiums and seminars all over the world on Kashmir, but this has a great significance for us because this is the first of its type held in Indonesia. From my point of view, as far as my study goes of the culture and history of Indonesia, it's one of the most important country in Southeast Asia, with which India should have very close, very deep, and very good, healthy, friendly relations. You can invite the Kashmir leadership, Indian leadership, sit together and discuss the Kashmir issue in the light of the information and input which you have received from various quarters, various sources, so that peace is established in Kashmir. And it makes convenient for the Indonesians. Indonesia is a beautiful country, and Kashmir, I differ with Utpal Kaul on one thing. Kashmir is not Utpal Kaul. Kashmir is nowhere comparison to Indonesia in beauty, in natural beauty, nowhere.
I go with you. I go with you.
So, but for a change from an oceanic scenario to mountainous scenario, a visit to Kashmir will be profitable. Thank you.
That is our international seminar. I myself very honored to be moderator with the three distinguished speakers. Two scholars, distinguished scholars from India, Professor Kasih Pandita and Uptal Kaul. I wish can you see in person in the future. And this international seminar just started for us to connect, to discuss with you and to Indonesian audience also, and to the audience to India. And I believe international seminar like this is very useful for academic community, for policymaker in Indonesia, in India, and other countries. And also, I believe very useful and have a good benefit for public in general. So in the future, we could have such a discussion and broad our mind, such as the topic Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen,
sorry.
yes, please, Pak Ramala, something
ask
say?
Jihan to take a group photo.
Okay, right.
Group photo.
Before we are ending of a seminar, please take our picture for memorabilia.
Yes.
Jihan, please take ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe it's done already. So again, thank you very much on behalf of CSEAS, Center for Southeast Asia Studies Indonesia, the organizer of this seminar, and of course support from Mr. Peramala. I myself, as academic staff in University of Muhammadiyah Jakarta, this is one of the Islamic University Indonesia, appreciate to this international seminar. Hope we can see again in other topic, and of course relate to international affairs and environmental affairs done by CSEAS Indonesia. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
In
Thank
other
you.
opportunity and chance. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.